The sun was just beginning to set, casting a warm glow across the streets as the black lawyer, Maya Thompson, made her way to one of the most talked-about restaurants in the city. She had heard about the place for months, praised by friends and colleagues for its exceptional food and cozy atmosphere. Today, she was looking forward to a rare moment of peace after a busy week of meetings and court appearances. Maya had worked tirelessly to build her career, earning the respect of those around her with her hard work and commitment. She was used to dealing with challenges, but today, she hoped to enjoy a simple, peaceful evening. As she walked through the door of the restaurant, the hostess glanced up from the counter, but her smile quickly faded. Maya, who had dressed carefully in a professional yet comfortable outfit, greeted her warmly, hoping for a pleasant dining experience. But the hostess didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked over her shoulder and motioned for another employee to come forward. Maya's smile began to fade as she sensed something was off, but she brushed it aside, attributing it to the busy evening rush. "I'll need to wait for a table," Maya said politely, trying to keep things light. The hostess gave her a quick, somewhat uncomfortable glance but nodded. "Just a moment," she said curtly, turning away. Maya noticed that the other patrons around her were being seated promptly, while she was left standing, ignored. Minutes passed, and still, no one came to check in with her. The hustle and bustle of the restaurant continued around her, yet she remained the only person left unacknowledged. Maya looked around and felt her unease growing. She didn't want to make a scene, but this was strange. It was almost as if they were deliberately avoiding her. The tension in the air seemed to build as time dragged on. Other people walked in, and they were greeted with smiles and shown to their tables. Maya tried not to feel frustrated, but a sense of injustice began to bubble inside her. She had always prided herself on staying calm in difficult situations, but the feeling of being ignored, of being treated as invisible, was starting to wear on her. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, another staff member walked past her. Maya caught his eye and gently raised her hand to get his attention. "Excuse me," she said, keeping her voice even. "I've been waiting for quite a while now. Is there a table available?" The employee didn't even stop. He gave her a quick, dismissive glance and kept walking without a word. Maya stood there, stunned. She couldn't believe what was happening. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was something deeper. As the reality of the situation sank in, Maya felt a mix of confusion and frustration. She had never imagined something like this would happen to her, especially at a place that had built a reputation for high-end service. Maya had faced plenty of challenges in her career, but she had always risen above them. She had worked hard to get to where she was, and she wasn't about to let something like this slide. Her first instinct was to leave, to walk out, and never look back. But then, a thought crossed her mind. She wasn't just any customer. She was someone who could make sure this story was heard. This wasn't the first time she had encountered racial prejudice, and it wouldn't be the last. But this time would be different. She wasn't going to let the restaurant off the hook so easily. Maya's resolve strengthened. She was going to make sure that what had just happened didn't go unnoticed. As she stood there, the weight of the situation pressing down on her, she made a decision. She wasn't going to give up or walk away. She would return the next day. And when she did, she would make sure the restaurant understood that there were consequences for this kind of behavior. This version expands on the moment of discrimination Maya faces while keeping it engaging and impactful. It's designed to make the audience feel Maya's frustration and curiosity, setting the stage for her return and what's to come. The following day, Maya woke up feeling the weight of the previous evening's events still lingering in her mind. The incident at the restaurant hadn't just been a minor inconvenience. It had shaken her in a way that she hadn't expected. As she sat at her kitchen table, sipping her coffee and looking out the window, she tried to understand why this had affected her so deeply. Maya had faced many challenges in her life, both in her career as a lawyer and as a black woman navigating spaces where she often felt like an outsider. But yesterday, Something had felt different. She wasn't one to let things slide, and she certainly wasn't going to let this slip past her without some form of action. Maya wasn't just thinking about herself. She was thinking about the larger picture. She thought about how many times people like her, people of color, had faced similar challenges without ever speaking up. It wasn't just about the refusal of service. It was about the message it sent. It was a reminder of the subtle but powerful racism that people often encounter in their everyday lives. And Maya wasn't going to let that pass without making sure it was known. Her thoughts were interrupted by the ping of her phone. It was a message from one of her closest colleagues, Claire. Claire had heard about the incident from a mutual friend and was already aware of Maya's plans to return to the restaurant. "You don't have to do this alone." The message read, "We've got your back. If you need anything, count on us." Maya smiled at the message. She felt grateful for the support, but in truth, this was something she needed to handle on her own. It wasn't about a group standing behind her, although she appreciated the solidarity. It was about her taking control of the situation and making sure it was known that this kind of behavior wouldn't be tolerated. As the day passed, Maya made calls, gathered her thoughts, and even began to research her legal options. She knew that what happened the night before wasn't just a personal issue. It was a violation of her rights. But she didn't want to go straight into a legal battle. She wanted to make a statement first, to show the restaurant that she wasn't going to be intimidated or silenced. She knew that the law could help her later, but this time, her actions needed to speak louder than any legal document ever could. Maya thought about what she would say when she returned to the restaurant. It had to be precise, firm, and calm. There was no room for anger. This was not a situation where emotions would help her make her point. This was about professionalism. She wanted to make sure that the restaurant understood the gravity of what they had done without raising her voice or acting out of frustration. As the evening approached, Maya prepared herself mentally. She could feel her heart racing, but her resolve remained unshaken. She knew it wasn't going to be easy, but she was determined to face it head-on. She dressed in the same professional attire she had worn the night before, her suit sharp and confident, her posture strong. The small details mattered to her. This wasn't just about going back to get a meal. It was about reclaiming her dignity, about demanding respect. When she stepped outside and locked the door behind her, Maya took a deep breath. She had no idea what the night would bring, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to let it go unnoticed. This expanded version emphasizes Maya's emotional journey and growing determination. It creates a natural progression from the shock she felt in the first part to her decision to take action, building suspense for her return to the restaurant. The tone remains calm and reflective, with Maya's thought process guiding her every move. Maya spent the morning preparing for what she knew would be a challenging evening. She didn't just want to return to the restaurant as a customer. She wanted to make sure that what had happened would be addressed and understood. As she gathered her thoughts, she couldn't help but reflect on how many times she had seen people like herself dismissed or ignored. This wasn't just about one bad experience at a restaurant. It was about a pattern, one that ran deeper than any individual encounter. Before heading out, Maya decided to call a few friends and colleagues who had always been there for her. She knew she needed their support, not just for the emotional boost, but to help her stay grounded in the face of the challenges ahead. Her first call was to Claire, the colleague who had reached out to her earlier. "How are you feeling?" Claire asked after the brief exchange of pleasantries. Maya appreciated Claire's tone, one of genuine care, but she didn't want to dwell on the emotional side of things too much. She had made up her mind. "I'm focused," Maya replied confidently. "I've got a plan for tonight. But it helps to have people in my corner, you know." Claire was quick to assure her that she wasn't alone. "You're not just representing yourself here, Maya. You're showing everyone that this kind of behavior won't be tolerated. And we're behind you, all the way." It was exactly what Maya needed to hear. As much as she valued her own strength, the support of her network made a world of difference. She knew that the conversation tonight wouldn't just be about her personal experience, but also about making a statement for others who had faced similar challenges but didn't have the chance to speak out. The next call was to her brother, Jamal, who had always been the more outspoken member of their family. "Sis, you've got this," he said after Maya shared her plan. "Don't back down. This is more than just a meal. It's about respect. And you deserve it." Maya smiled, feeling the weight of her brother's words. Jamal's blunt honesty was just what she needed. His message was simple: stand tall, speak your truth, and don't let anyone diminish your worth. As the time for her return drew closer, Maya sat quietly for a moment, gathering her thoughts. She had made the decision to go into the restaurant without being confrontational. She would not give them the satisfaction of an argument or a heated exchange. She wanted them to understand the gravity of their actions through calm, measured words. She wasn't going in there to yell or demand an apology. She was going to show them the power of dignity in the face of disrespect. When the evening arrived, Maya donned her professional attire once more, this time with even more confidence. Her decision was clear. This wasn't about a meal. It was about standing up for herself and others who had faced similar treatment. Her resolve had only strengthened over the past 24 hours. She wasn't afraid to speak out, and she wasn't going to let anyone make her feel like she didn't belong in a space just because of who she was. As she stepped out of her apartment, she felt a sense of calmness that surprised her. The earlier frustration had shifted into a quiet confidence. She wasn't walking into that restaurant as a woman who had been wronged. She was walking in as someone who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to make sure others saw it too. In this expanded version, we see Maya's preparations intensify as she builds her resolve through conversations with supportive friends and family. The emotional journey is deepened, and the build-up toward her return to the restaurant feels more powerful. As Maya walked towards the restaurant, her heart beat steadily, but with a purpose. The evening sky had turned a soft shade of purple, and the lights from the surrounding buildings reflected off the pavement, creating a calm atmosphere that contrasted with the intense thoughts swirling in her mind. She had decided to return, not because she was looking for revenge, but because she wanted to make sure that what had happened wouldn't simply disappear. It needed to be acknowledged, and she was ready to ensure that it was. When she arrived at the restaurant's entrance, she hesitated for only a brief moment. The same familiar door, the same gleaming windows, and the same cozy vibe that had initially drawn her in now seemed almost foreign. This time, the air felt heavier, as though the restaurant itself was aware of her purpose. She stood tall, straightening her suit jacket, taking a deep breath, and stepping through the door with calm confidence. The hostess who had ignored her the previous night was still there, and she looked up as Maya entered. There was a slight pause, a moment of recognition, and Maya could see a flicker of unease in the hostess's eyes. For a split second, the room seemed to quiet, and Maya felt all eyes turned toward her. But she didn't falter. She remained composed, her movements deliberate and assured. The hostess smiled awkwardly, her discomfort clearly visible. "Good evening. How may I help you?" she asked, though her voice lacked the warmth it had for other guests. Maya met her gaze, maintaining eye contact without hesitation. "I'd like a table for one, please," she said softly, her tone even but firm. "I'll be happy to wait if needed." The hostess looked momentarily flustered. She glanced around, almost as if searching for someone else to handle the situation. The bustling activity of the restaurant seemed to continue around them, but Maya remained focused, unaffected by the chaos. She had prepared for this moment. She had a plan, and she wasn't about to back down now. Finally, the hostess, still visibly uncomfortable, directed Maya to an available table in the corner. "This way, please," she said, leading her toward the back of the restaurant. The journey felt longer than it should have, each step a reminder of the tension between them. As Maya walked, she could feel the eyes of the staff following her, their glances quick and uncertain, but she refused to let their judgment affect her. When Maya reached her table, she sat down with grace, folding her napkin in her lap. She took a moment to survey the room, noting the contrast between the polite but awkward behavior of the staff and the warm atmosphere that patrons were enjoying. It seemed like nothing had changed, but Maya knew that tonight things would be different. The waiter came over, his expression wary but professional. He placed the menu in front of her and began to explain the specials. Maya nodded, listening politely, but her mind was elsewhere. She wasn't here to focus on the food. She was here to make sure that she wasn't treated like she was invisible again. Her thoughts began to sharpen as she thought about the next steps. She wasn't planning to cause a scene. She didn't want to escalate the situation unnecessarily. But at the same time, she knew she had to make it clear that this was not acceptable. The night was still young, but Maya could already feel the weight of the conversation that was about to unfold. She knew that the challenge before her wasn't just about sitting down at a table or ordering food. It was about standing up for what was right and setting an example. Her voice, calm and steady, would carry more weight than any argument or confrontation. It was time to show them that treating people with respect was not an option. It was a necessity. This expanded part gives a deeper insight into Maya's calm resolve as she returns to the restaurant. The tension is palpable, but her focus remains on her mission to make sure her presence is noticed and respected, without resorting to conflict. The tone emphasizes her strength and determination, keeping the narrative engaging and building anticipation for what will happen next. As the evening went on, Maya remained calm, her presence in the restaurant like a quiet storm waiting to unfold. She could feel the eyes of the staff on her, and though they tried to act as if everything was normal, there was a palpable tension in the air. The waiter who had served her earlier came by to check in on her, but this time, Maya's demeanor was different. She wasn't going to let the moment pass without ensuring her voice was heard. After taking a deep breath, Maya gently placed her menu down on the table. The waiter came closer and began his usual routine, but Maya had already made up her mind. She wasn't going to let this slip by without a word. She needed to make it clear that the behavior she had experienced the night before wasn't something that could be ignored. "Excuse me," she said, looking up at the waiter with a calm but firm expression. "I'm not here just for dinner tonight. There's something important I need to talk to you about." Her voice was steady, without a hint of anger, but there was an unmistakable authority in it. The waiter froze for a moment, unsure of how to respond. He had no idea what was coming, but he could tell from the way Maya was speaking that this wasn't going to be an ordinary conversation. "I was here last night," Maya continued, keeping her voice level, "and I was treated differently from other customers. I was ignored, and that's not something I expect from a restaurant like this." The waiter seemed to fumble with his words, unsure how to react to her calm yet pointed statement. He began to apologize, but Maya held up a hand, signaling him to stop. "I don't want an apology," she said, her gaze unwavering. "What I want is for you to understand that this kind of treatment isn't acceptable. Not here, not anywhere. I was a paying customer, just like everyone else, and I deserve to be treated with the same respect." The waiter opened his mouth, but Maya continued before he could speak. "I'm not angry. I'm not looking to make a scene, but I am asking for accountability. I want you to take a moment and think about how something like this could affect someone else, how it would feel to be treated as if you don't belong. It's not just about me. It's about everyone who has ever been in my position." She paused, letting her words sink in. She wasn't trying to embarrass the waiter, but she wanted to make sure he understood the gravity of the situation. The waiter stood there for a moment, looking as though he were trying to absorb what Maya had just said. He appeared to be genuinely uncomfortable, his face slightly flushed with embarrassment. But Maya wasn't there to make him feel guilty. She was there to make a point. She wasn't asking for anyone to lose their job, or for the situation to escalate into something bigger than it needed to be. But she needed him to understand that the behavior she had experienced wasn't just about a single mistake. It was part of a larger issue. "I don't want to cause any trouble," Maya said, her tone softening, though still firm. "But I'm not going to just sit here and ignore what happened. I'm asking for change, not for punishment. I believe in doing things the right way, but that starts with acknowledging when something is wrong." The waiter looked at her, his expression softening. It was clear that her words had made an impact on him. He nodded slowly, and for the first time that evening, Maya saw a glimpse of sincerity in his eyes. "Thank you for your honesty," he said quietly, his voice tinged with regret. "I'll make sure to talk to the manager about this. It won't happen again." Maya gave him a small nod, her mission clear. She wasn't expecting immediate results, but the conversation had opened the door. She hadn't raised her voice, hadn't made a scene. She had simply spoken the truth, and that, in itself, was enough to make an impact. As the waiter walked away, Maya felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. She had taken the first step in making sure that her experience wasn't dismissed, and though the situation wasn't resolved yet, she knew that change had started, and that, she realized, was more important than anything else. This version of Part 5 expands on the pivotal conversation between Maya and the waiter. It emphasizes Maya's calm but firm approach to addressing the issue, showing her commitment to handling the situation professionally while also standing up for herself. The dialogue helps make the interaction feel real and impactful, keeping the story engaging and tension-building. Maya sat back in her chair, watching the waiter disappear into the back of the restaurant. She could feel the weight of the conversation lingering in the air, a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. She knew that what had just happened wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of a process, and she was ready for it. As she waited, Maya's thoughts drifted. She thought about how many times she had let things slide in the past, how many times she had been forced to bite her tongue and accept the things that made her uncomfortable. But tonight was different. Tonight, she was taking control, not just for herself, but for anyone else who had ever felt overlooked or dismissed. Minutes passed, and Maya could sense the tension in the room growing. The staff members seemed to be moving more cautiously, stealing glances in her direction. She wasn't sure if they were afraid of her or simply unsure of how to handle the situation. Either way, she felt empowered. She wasn't going to let fear or hesitation change her course. The waiter returned to her table, his steps slow and deliberate. He had a different air about him now, less hurried, more thoughtful. When he stopped in front of her, he cleared his throat and spoke with a quiet, almost apologetic tone. "I spoke to the manager, and he wants to speak with you." Maya nodded, her calm composure still intact. "Thank you," she said softly, though her mind was racing. She knew that the manager's response would be crucial. It wasn't just about fixing the issue at hand. It was about making sure that this was acknowledged in a way that would prevent it from happening again, not just to her, but to others. The waiter led Maya to a private corner of the restaurant where the manager was waiting. He looked up as they approached, his expression a mix of concern and professionalism. "Miss Thompson, I'm so sorry for what happened last night," he began, his voice genuine but laced with a hint of nervousness. "We take our service seriously here, and it's clear that we failed you. I want to assure you that this will not be ignored." Maya took a seat across from him, feeling the shift in the atmosphere. The manager seemed sincere, but Maya wasn't there to hear empty words. She was there to make sure that this apology wasn't just a formality. It needed to be backed by real action. "I appreciate your apology," Maya said, her voice steady but firm. "But what I'm asking for is more than just words. It's about changing the culture here, about ensuring that what happened to me last night doesn't happen again to anyone else. I've experienced enough to know that this isn't just a one-time mistake. It's about something deeper." The manager nodded, looking at her thoughtfully. "I understand. I've already spoken with the staff, and we're going to start sensitivity training right away. We will also be reevaluating our hiring and training practices to make sure that everyone is treated equally, regardless of who they are or where they come from." Maya listened carefully, her expression never wavering. She wasn't satisfied yet, but the manager's willingness to take responsibility gave her hope that something real could come out of this conversation. "That's a good start," Maya said, leaning forward slightly. "But I want to make sure that this is a long-term commitment. It's not enough to just address the staff now. I want to know that the values of respect and inclusion will be woven into the fabric of this restaurant moving forward. This needs to be a priority, not just a reaction to a complaint." The manager took a deep breath, clearly understanding the weight of her words. "You're absolutely right. We can do better, and we will. I will personally make sure that these changes are implemented, and we will keep you updated on our progress." Maya nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over her. It wasn't over yet, but it felt like a small victory. She had been heard. She had been taken seriously. And most importantly, the restaurant had committed to change. As she stood up to leave, the manager gave her a final nod of acknowledgement. "Thank you for your patience, Miss Thompson. We truly appreciate your understanding, and we're grateful for the opportunity to correct this." Maya smiled softly, her mission for the evening now complete. She wasn't expecting perfection, but she was leaving with a sense of fulfillment. She had made sure that her voice had been heard, and she had made a difference. She was leaving the restaurant not as a victim, but as someone who had turned a negative experience into a powerful opportunity for change. This version of Part 6 focuses on Maya's meeting with the manager, where she continues to assert her position in a calm and professional manner. It shows her strategic thinking and her ability to handle the situation with both grace and firmness, while also allowing for growth in the restaurant's response. The tone remains measured and purposeful, keeping. As Maya left the restaurant, she felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. The evening had gone better than she had expected, but it wasn't over yet. The manager had promised changes, and now she would be watching closely to see if those words turned into actions. She knew that sometimes change didn't happen overnight. It took time, persistence, and a genuine commitment from everyone involved. But tonight, Maya felt like she had sparked something that could potentially make a difference, not just for her, but for others who might face the same treatment. Over the next few days, Maya began to notice a shift. Her phone buzzed with messages from friends and colleagues who had heard about her experience. They praised her for taking a stand, for speaking up when so many others might have stayed silent. Maya wasn't looking for praise. She didn't do it for attention or recognition. But the support she received made her feel like her actions had rippled out beyond just herself. Her story had touched others, and that in itself was rewarding. But it wasn't just her network that had taken notice. The incident had made its way into the local news. A journalist from the city's main newspaper had heard about what had happened and reached out to Maya for an interview. At first, she was hesitant. She didn't want to be portrayed as a victim, and she didn't want to draw unnecessary attention to herself. But after a long conversation with a few trusted friends, Maya decided to go ahead with the interview. If she could use this platform to bring attention to the bigger issue of discrimination, it would be worth it. The interview was scheduled for the following day. When the journalist arrived, Maya sat down in her living room, feeling more composed than she had expected. She was used to being in control of her environment, whether it was in the courtroom or in her personal life. But today felt different. Today, she wasn't fighting a case. She was sharing her story, her truth, and she wasn't about to hold back. The journalist asked her about the incident at the restaurant, and Maya spoke candidly, describing the way she had been ignored and how it had made her feel. But she also spoke about the importance of accountability, of businesses recognizing that their actions have consequences. She talked about the value of respect in any setting, and how important it was for people to treat others with dignity, no matter who they were or where they came from. The interview was more than just about her experience. It was about raising awareness and challenging others to think about their actions. The story was published the next morning, and it quickly gained traction. People began sharing it on social media, talking about the importance of standing up to discrimination and the need for businesses to create inclusive spaces for everyone. Maya's story was no longer just her own. It had become a conversation that others wanted to be part of. Comments flooded in, some from people who had faced similar experiences, and others from those who were just starting to realize how important these issues were. For Maya, this wasn't about a viral story or being the center of attention. It was about making sure that people who faced injustice had a voice, that those who felt invisible could find strength in their own truth. The restaurant had taken steps to address the issue, but this was bigger than just one restaurant. This was about creating a culture of respect that extended beyond any single business or community. As the days passed, Maya received more messages, some from people she didn't even know, telling her that her story had inspired them to take action in their own lives. It was a humbling experience for her, one that reminded her of the power of speaking out, of using her voice to create change. Maya knew that the path ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be setbacks, and she would face resistance. But she also knew that the ripple effect of her actions had already begun to take shape, and that was enough to keep her motivated. She hadn't just stood up for herself. She had made sure that her voice would echo long after the conversation ended. And for her, that was the most rewarding part of it all. This expanded part builds on Maya's sense of accomplishment, showing how her actions ripple out to affect others and generate a larger conversation. It emphasizes the idea that speaking up isn't just about personal victory, but about creating change and inspiring others to take action as well. It also continues to highlight her calm, composed, yet strong character, keeping the story engaging and impactful. A few weeks passed after the article was published, and Maya continued to reflect on everything that had unfolded. The story had gained more attention than she'd expected, but what mattered most to her was the impact it had on the restaurant and the larger community. She had done more than just address an injustice in the moment. She had sparked a conversation about respect and equality, something that was long overdue. One evening, as Maya was going through some of her emails, she received an unexpected message. It was from the manager of the restaurant where it all began. He had written to thank her for the role she had played in helping them see the error of their ways and for pushing them to do better. In his email, he explained that the restaurant had followed through with the sensitivity training they had promised, and they were also working to implement a more inclusive hiring process. The manager mentioned that the staff had been receptive to the training and that the atmosphere in the restaurant was beginning to feel more welcoming and diverse. Maya read the message with mixed emotions. On the one hand, she was glad to hear that the restaurant had followed through with the changes they had promised. It was a step in the right direction. But on the other hand, she knew that real change didn't happen overnight. It took time, persistence, and continuous effort. She was satisfied, but she knew the work didn't stop there. A few days later, Maya decided to visit the restaurant again. She wasn't sure what to expect this time. She didn't want to go there just for a meal. She wanted to see if the changes the manager had mentioned were visible. As she walked in, she noticed a subtle difference. The atmosphere felt calmer, more respectful. The staff greeted her with warm smiles, and she could sense a shift in how they interacted with the customers. She was led to a table quickly, and the waiter who approached her seemed genuinely kind. He took her order with patience and attentiveness, something that had been missing the night she had first visited. Maya sat back in her chair, observing quietly. She wasn't going to make a big deal of it. She wasn't there to make any speeches or cause a scene. She simply wanted to see if the changes were real. As she ate, she saw other customers being treated with the same respect and attentiveness that she was receiving now. The restaurant had changed in a way that felt genuine. And for that, Maya felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. Before she left, the manager came over to thank her in person. He told her how grateful they were for her to return and to see the progress they had made. "Your actions have made a difference, Maya," he said with sincerity. "We were blinded to the way things were before, but you opened our eyes. We're committed to making sure that the culture we've created here is one that reflects the values we now know are important." Maya smiled and nodded, appreciative of his words. She didn't need recognition, but it felt good to know that the restaurant had taken responsibility for its actions and was moving forward in a positive direction. She knew that the journey for true inclusivity wasn't a simple or quick one, but this was a step forward, and that was enough for her. As she left the restaurant, Maya felt a sense of peace settle within her. She had done what she set out to do. Her story had started with a moment of injustice, but it had grown into something much more meaningful. She had inspired change, not only in one restaurant, but in the hearts and minds of those who had heard her story. For Maya, that was the most rewarding part of it all, not just the tangible results, but the knowledge that her voice had helped shift the conversation toward a more respectful and inclusive future. This final part wraps up Maya's journey, showing how her actions led to real positive change. It emphasizes her calm and composed nature, showing that the work isn't just about a single victory, but about the larger impact she has made on the community. The tone remains reflective and satisfying, leaving the reader with a sense of closure while also acknowledging that the journey for change is ongoing.